Thank you and welcome today. I am honored to present IFAD's Associate Vice President for the Strategy and Knowledge Department, Ms. Meike van Ginneken. Meike, welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Gladys. And I'm very happy to see so many people today at our first Innovation Talk. I'm also very happy to see many old friends and new friends from institutions around the world, IFPRI, CGIAR, FAO, and the World Bank. So great to see you, and I hope in the near future we can see each other live again. So we're launching today the Agriculture Investment Data Analysis, or Aida, which was developed in partnership with IFPRI and the CGIAR Research Program on Policies, Institutions and Markets. We're also launching the new series of IFAD Innovation Talks, and I'm very excited about both of those. These talks are part of our knowledge management strategy, where we put people at the core of knowledge management. We generate knowledge in many ways through our projects on the ground, as well as research, impact assessment and evaluation, and we learn from the communities, the governance and partners we work with. We learn from you. We invest in peer-to-peer knowledge learning through tools like communities of practice, and this is why last year we launched the IFAD Innovation Network on the D Group platform. The network is an informal space where you can share ideas, good practice, tools and lessons on how we can use innovation to improve performance and to better address the challenge of rural communities. Everything we do is related to fighting poverty and hunger, and we know that innovation and applying innovation at scale is critical to actually reach at the SDGs, especially SDG 1 and 2, and to end poverty and to end hunger. The community of practice that this event is organized by is open to IFAD staff, representatives of our member states, colleagues, representative academia, research centers, think tanks, the private sector and other development agencies. So this will be a series of monthly sessions that will feature innovative approaches developed by members of the Innovation Network. And I'm very excited that we are kicking this off by a real innovation, an analytical tool developed by IFAD, IFPRI, and CGIAR to assess the impact of our investments. As I said, it's called Aida, or Agriculture Investment Data Analysis. These kind of analytical tools have a great potential to help us achieve the SDGs and to provide experts with policy and investment guidelines that can help to design and assess national strategies and projects. So without further ado, I think we need to focus on the substance. I'm looking forward to today's demonstration and panel discussion. And more importantly, I'm looking forward to watching this digital cooperation among our agencies prosper and deliver tangible results for the rural poor. By prioritizing policies and investment, public financing and private investment is scarce, so we need these kind of tools to make sure that we target our investments well and that we know what works and what doesn't work. So I wish a successful launch and an effective Aida. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you so much, Meike, for those encouraging words and also for helping us to focus on what are the most relevant achievements that we would like to aim with the Aida tool. There is a small change in the agenda. Donal Brown will be joining us for closing remarks. So I would like now to introduce Dina Saleh, Regional Director of the Near East, North Africa, Europe and Central Asia Division. Dina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gladys, and good day to everyone attending. This is really an impressive attendance. So as Meike has said, we're very happy to see everybody interested in this new tool that we are launching today. But even more importantly is the partnerships that stem from these type of discussions and these types of conventions where we're looking at what can we do differently in the development space. So with that, of course, I want to acknowledge the participation of representatives from government, institutions, development partners, and also interested colleagues from just private sector who have joined us today. This resonates also with the importance of addressing poverty, food insecurity, and inequalities that are confronting us much more than ever before. As you heard, I'm the regional director of the Near East North Africa, and particularly so for me, this is a very important event today because this was a brainchild of this region that stemmed from many different reasons, but the Near East North Africa, for many of you know, is a region of manifold identities, where fast-running economies and wealthy oil exporters border with some of the poorest countries and the most fragile and conflict-affected areas of the world. So we needed to think out of the box and be creative to support governments in tackling their rural development policy challenges. At IFAD, we promote rural transformation and resilience by focusing our interventions on poor, small-scale producers and marginalized groups in remote rural areas. We work at the grassroots level to harness the knowledge and novelty generated by small-scale farmers towards increasing productivity, strengthening their resilience, and improving livelihoods of rural women and men. So at the same time, we have been devoting increasing attention to digital agriculture and are gearing up to bring new values to the way we are serving smallholder farmers. Just 2 years ago, IFAD approved its first comprehensive strategy for ICT for development, aimed to increase development impact and improve the economic and social conditions of small-scale producers. In NEN, we're also, which is our region, we're also developing an ICT 4D action plan to usher in a new era of projects with end-to-end solutions for designs, targeting, M&E across the region, just to list a few. Our innovations cut across 3 distinct areas: crop production innovations, natural resource management innovations, and rural finance and markets innovations. And to mention a few concrete examples of what we do in this region, we've tried to test this in Tunisia by detecting change with remote sensing. So our value chain project there, known as the agro-pastoral value chain, tried to harness high resolution imagery to track the development of productive and communication infrastructure. We also piloted in Morocco and Egypt our project's online marketing platforms, which you'll hear a bit more about. And in Jordan, we delivered grants on time via e-wallet applications. So to conclude, complete data-driven approach to IFAD programs will transform the way development projects will serve smallholders. And the Aida tool really brings us one step closer to this end. In fact, Aida elaborates data to provide options for policy and investments that it can increase livelihoods and resilience in rural areas. So I'll stop here and really hope that through today's event, we will be able to provide a clear demonstration that this tool is one of a kind and a great example of evidence-based impact measurement for agricultural development. I hope you'll find the event enriching, and I look forward to the discussion. Back to you, Gladys.
Thank you, Dina, and thank you for emphasizing the work that IFAD is doing in the NEN region and the new ICT 4D strategy, which will help IFAD delivering focused and effective digitalization at the corporate, but also mainly in the field. I would like now to give the floor to Arndt, Director of Environment and Production Technology Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Channing, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to congratulate IFAD for the launch of their InnovationTalk series. I'm going to echo Meike and Dina. Innovation must play a key role in the transformation of food systems and for achieving the SDG goals. At the CGIAR and at IFPRI, we're in the process of a big reorganization process in order to deliver more innovation at scale over the next decade. The innovation in focus today is in the area of policy and investment analysis, specifically the Agriculture Investment Data Analyzer. I'd like to thank IFAD and the CGIAR research program on policies, institutions, and markets for funding the development of Aida. Aida is a set of forward-looking planning and evaluation tools to help improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and scaling up of rural development policies and projects. In the context of the Aida effort, IFPRI has developed 4 online tools, 14 research papers and briefs, 14 workshops and trainings were held, and 65 people trained. We have also quickly responded during the pandemic to use SAM multiplier models to assess the impact of COVID-19 in our Aida partner countries. The ultimate goal of the Aida online tool is to influence the design and prioritization of policies and investments to enable rural people to overcome poverty and food insecurity in targeted MENA countries. The project closely worked with partner countries, Egypt, Jordan, Yemen, and Tunisia. On behalf of the IFPRI team, I would like to thank our key partners in country for the excellent support and collaboration. Aida is the first tool that allows users to model without a model. So here, I will stop to let the people who have done the work explain what they mean by that tantalizing phrase. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Channing, for emphasizing the importance of partnerships and knowledge dissemination and our joint work. IFPRI, IFAD, and CGIAR PIM have done an amazing work in developing this tool. So very excited to have you all of you here today. So I would like to now give the floor to Martien van Nieuwkoop. Sorry for the pronunciation. Martien is Global Director of Agriculture and Food at the World Bank Group. Martien, the floor is yours.
Very good. Thanks very much, Gladys, and good morning from a sunny Washington, D.C. I mean, good to see you all, and great to see so many familiar faces. Thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to speak at this launching event of the Agriculture Investments Data Analyzer. Let me start by congratulating the Aida development team, and by saying also that the launch of Aida comes at a very good time, I think. The economic impacts of COVID-19, we all know, are causing significant fiscal stress in many countries. This is forcing policymakers to take a hard look at the efficiency and the effectiveness of public expenditures and public support programs to agriculture. And accordingly, I mean, tools like Aida that promote evidence-based policymaking, I think, are extremely relevant and useful. And as I said, of course, this is particularly relevant, I mean, and true for the agriculture and food sector for a number of reasons. I mean, first, I mean, public support to agriculture, to the agriculture sector is massive. I mean, OECD in its latest Making Better Policies for Food Systems report that was released a few weeks ago, I mean, puts the food number at $700 billion per year. Second, most of the public support to agriculture is very ineffective, inefficient, and generating massive negative environmental externalities. Only 16% of it is allocated to public goods. And third, of course, there are very strong vested interests associated with existing public support programs to agriculture, making reforming these programs extremely politically sensitive. So tools like Aida, in my view, then can indicate the most attractive alternative allocations of existing public support program. And therefore, they could be extremely powerful. I mean, by demonstrating both the superior returns of these investment packages, as well as by using the different weighting schemes that are being deployed, I mean, to link the composition of these packages to prevailing political realities or priorities. For instance, you know, I think you've all seen, I mean, the policy reforms announced by the government of India, and now the massive protests in India by farmers against the policy reforms that were announced. And it kind of makes me wonder, I mean, what difference a tool like Aida, I mean, could have played, I mean, in the India context, I mean, actually to make sure that the discussions are better based on evidence. Let me finish by saying that the World Bank is very much engaged on the repurposing agenda of public support to agriculture for better nutritional and environmental outcomes of the food system. So in that respect, we are looking very much forward towards widespread application of the Aida tool as an instrument for evidence-based policymaking which I said is critical to move this politically sensitive agenda of repurposing public support to agriculture forward. So we're looking forward, I mean, to work with IFAD and IFPRI in moving forward this agenda. Thank you, and back to you, Gladys.
Martien, thank you so much. Thank you also for focusing on how Aida will help us to deliver more effective and efficient results. We are running a little bit over time, so I would like to move immediately to James Thurlow. We're very excited for your presentation and the demonstration of the Aida tool. So James, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's be honest. IFAD has a problem, right? Every year it has to decide what to invest in and what not to. And of course, IFAD is not alone in this. Every government in the world faces the same challenge. You know, which of the many investment options available to them should they prioritize, right? Should they hire another extension officer? Should they subsidize farm inputs? Should they irrigate another field or build a road linking farmers to markets? Should they provide cash or credit, right? These are tough questions, but they're also unavoidable. Someone has to make a final decision. Now, what makes these decisions so difficult is that they require us to weigh complex trade-offs, right? Trade-offs that arise because our resources are far more limited than our ambitions. How can we tell which investments are best when we've set for ourselves so many ambitious goals? We not only want our investments to raise farmers' incomes, but to also create growth and job opportunities throughout the agri-food system. We want to reduce poverty for both rural workers and for urban consumers. So given that this is a complex task and that trade-offs are unavoidable, how can we identify in advance which investments are going to be the most cost-effective at achieving our goals? So this is our challenge, right? This is our common problem. Now, the good news is that we have economic models that are well suited to answering these kinds of what if questions. What if I invest here instead of there? Right? 5 years ago, IFAD and IFPRI joined forces and launched a new class of model that I think, and of course I'm a little biased, but that I think is one of the best at capturing agri-food systems and how they link to the rest of a country's economy. We called our model RIAPA, and we now have these for 30 developing countries, covering 3/4 of the world's poor population. If we look forward 5 years, you know, we at IFPRI are using RIAPA every day to evaluate food policies and public investments and to advise governments on their national investment plans. But the even better news is that today, and thanks to continued support from IFAD, we're launching a new investment planning tool called Aida. Aida greatly expands RIAPA's modeling capabilities. Right? It allows us to track spending on different investments and to estimate each investment's contributions to achieving our development goals. Right? So with this information, we can anticipate investment impacts and compare alternative options. Now, as Channing said, Aida is a forward-looking model, but it is grounded on historical evidence. It draws on information from impact evaluation studies, donor projects, and government reports. So these sources tell us, for example, how much a hectare of irrigation is going to cost and what improved water management might mean for farm productivity. Aida uses this information to estimate the total productivity gains from an irrigation investment project And then RIAPA translates these into GDP and employment and poverty. Right? So essentially, Aida combines the strengths of, or the rigor, the structural rigor of ex-ante modeling with the empirical rigor of ex-post analysis. Now, of course, I'm the first to admit that our information and our models are never going to be perfect, that there's always going to be some educated guesswork and art to designing an investment project. But Aida provides us with a consistent framework that encourages us to be more transparent about the assumptions that we make, about how well we think our investments are going to perform, right? In that sense, Aida is a very useful tool for improving decision making. But I can hear what you're thinking, right? If we've got such great models, then why isn't everyone using them, right? Why is investment decision making still a problem? Well, I'll tell you, right? The truth is that, you know, every year, people like me and my colleagues at IFPRI, we run around all over the world training people to use our models. But the truth is that not everyone that we train is going to become an expert modeler, that not everyone has a job that allows them to become one. And so it's unlikely that we're going to be able to train enough people to ensure that our models are being used everywhere, at least we think they're needed, right? We have the right tool, but too few people can use it. So what do we do? Well, normally when our models are too complex, we simplify them. We literally take equations out of the model to make them easier to use. But the downside of doing that is that we degrade our capabilities. We produce evidence that's just okay. And the problem with okay evidence is that it's less compelling, right? It's easier to dismiss. And so we still run the risk of making ad hoc decisions and setting ourselves unrealistic goals, right? So that's not good enough. If it turns out that our models are both the solution and the problem, then we need to find another way to get advanced model-based analysis into the hands of people who are not modeling experts, right? Instead of taking equations out of the model, we've got to take the model out of the equation. We've got to find a way for people to model without a model. So that's the challenge that we set for ourselves when we started working with IFAD a few years ago. And so to appreciate the problem, let's think through how modeling normally works. So you have a modeler with an advanced degree who sits down behind a computer and starts writing complicated code into an expensive piece of software. And when they're finished, they hit the button. And the model takes time to run. And if it doesn't crash, it gives you results. So you can see the problem we're facing, right? We've got complicated code, we've got expensive software, and we've got an unreliable model. So these are the three problems that we need to overcome. So here's our innovation. We run millions of simulations through a country's Aida model, and we store the results in a big database up in the cloud. Now, all the user has to do, right, is go to a website and choose what to invest in, right? Extension, irrigation, or both, and where to invest, north, south, everywhere. They decide what will investment cost and what it might mean for farm productivity. And once they've finished designing their investment package, they hit the button. Now, instead of firing up a model in real time, we go and search that online database for the set of results that most closely match the choices the users just made. And we send those results back to the website. So now there's no model, there's no software, there's no delay. right? The user is guaranteed results because we've already solved the model for them in advance. And we report a whole range of outcomes, from changes in agricultural GDP to jobs created in the agri-food system to improvements in household poverty. Right? The kinds of indicators that IFAD and governments are interested in. So pre-solving the model is a big data solution to a problem that we've struggled with for years. But there's one more advantage. We at IFPRI are constantly improving our models and making them better. And we need somehow to transfer these to our users. Right? And normally what that means is that we have to travel all around the world running new courses. But now, with this online version of Aida, all we have to do is update the database remotely and the website. And then we know that everybody is using the best available model. Right? Everyone becomes an advanced modeler, even if they do their modeling on their phone. So what's available today? Right? So as mentioned, we have online versions of Aida for 4 countries in the NANA region. Right? Each country has its own set of investment options that are informed or reflect government's past and stated new priorities. And Aida's parameters, like, for example, how much does a hectare of irrigation cost? These default parameters these parameters are given default values that are based on expert opinion, whether it's from published research or interviews that we've conducted with those experts. And so the user should have enough information to get started straight away. But enough talking. Let me actually jump now into the Tunisia model and give you a demonstration of how simple Aida is to use. So what you can see on your screen is the homepage for the Tunisian version of Aida, and you can see immediately that it's a very simple interface. And this is by design. We want Aida to be as easy to look the same and be as easy to operate, whether you are on your computer or whether you are using your phone. There are a couple of things that I should mention. Firstly, if you're more comfortable in Arabic, then that is also an option that you can choose for these 4 Aida countries. And there's also a guide that you can click on that'll walk you through some of the key concepts and the necessary steps in order to run Aida. But let's get started. Now, there are some differences between the different country Aida versions. In the case of Tunisia, we run national scenarios, but in Egypt, you could also choose which regions of the country you want to invest in. But we're going to start with Tunisia, and so let's get started with running a simulation. So the first thing you need to do is decide what type of investment you're interested in analyzing. And so we're going to add our first investment. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we've got a list to choose from. We're going to work on extension. And so what you can see is there are 3 different key parameters that you need to, that you need to enter. The 3 different parameters that you need to enter. The first is how much are you going to spend? The second is how much each hectare of irrigation or extension is going to cost. And then the third is, how much more productive are farmers that receive extension services than those that don't? So for example, our default values here are coming from engagements with different users from expert opinion. And right now we've chosen to invest about 90 million dinar. That's about $30 million. And we've said that the cost per hectare of providing extension is about 150 dinars. That's about $50. And so let's assume in our case, we've decided to use digital extension services. And so we think we can actually lower the cost of that to, let's say, 100 dinars, or just under $40. But we also think that we're trying to reach more hard to reach farmers. And so the observed 14% productivity gain amongst farmers receiving extension is perhaps a little too high for the less favorable, for example, agroecological conditions that we're trying to reach. Let's lower that down to 10%. So what you can see here is that we are designing our investment package. We could also choose to bundle our extension services with a different type of investment. So we could, for example, decide, let's bundle this with irrigation, for example, and we would go through the same process for irrigation as we have just done for extension. But for this demonstration, let's keep it simple. We're just going to focus on a single intervention. Now I'm going to click on this button, which says View Model Results. And now remember what is happening. We're going to go and search that online database for the set of results that matches the choices that the users just made, that we've just entered. And so I'm going to click on it, and you'll see how quickly we get results. There's no delay. The power of Aida does not depend on the power of your computer or the speed of your internet connection. We've got some key results to focus in on. We've got changes in GDP, jobs created or employment changes, and household welfare. Let's just focus on GDP to begin with. We can see we've invested 90 million dinar into extension services, and we can see the changes in GDP for crops and for livestock, for agriculture as a whole, but also for the broader agri-food system. And by that, we mean not only agriculture, but the value added that is generated in processing, trade, and transport, and other areas within the agri-food system. And what you can see here is that our investment in extension and the parameter values that we have entered leads to 152 million dinar increase in agri-food system GDP. That's significantly larger than the 90 million dinar that we invested, and that suggests that we've had a positive return on investment. If we jump over to household welfare, for example, we can see that the welfare gains are significantly larger for rural households, but urban households also benefit because increased agricultural and food supply lowers prices and helps urban consumers too. Likewise, we're strongly favoring the poor, but non-poor households also benefit from lower food prices. So that's about as much as time as I have to give you a demonstration of Aida, but hopefully I've shown you enough to convince you that Aida is very easy to use, and hopefully encourage you to use Aida yourself. You could do it now by using your phone, but I'd encourage you not to, because we're about to hear from some excellent panelists. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, James. That was very, very impressive. I really like the approach of focusing on the problem, the tasks that we are aiming to solve, and the performance of the model. Thank you so much, James, Senior Research Fellow at IFPRI. I would like now to give the floor to our next session that will be moderated by Sudan Al-Eriani. He is a program analyst at IFAD. Sudan and panelists, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gladys. And let me start by saying good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us from different areas in the world. I am happy to be here with you today. I would like to start by thanking our keynote speakers for the inspiring words. And I would like to thank James for his excellent demonstration of the tool. Without further ado, I would like to present our panelists today. So we have 4 panelists. The first is Mr. Mohammed Al-Kirsh, Assistant to the Minister of Agriculture and Land Reclamation, Egypt. We have second from Tunisia, Mr. Zuhair Al-Qadi, International Macro Fiscal Advisor and former Director of the Tunisian Institution of Competitiveness and Quantitative Studies. After that, from IFAD, we will have Mr. Athur Mabiso, Senior Technical Specialist and Economist, Research and Impact Division. Finally, we will have from FAO, Mr. Christian Derlagen, Project Manager and Senior Economist, Monitoring and Analyzing Food and Agricultural Policies Program. So we will start with Mr. Mohammed Al-Kirsh, who will be sharing with us the experience of Egypt in using the Aida tool. Mr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مساء الخير على حضراتكم جميعا زملائي الأعزاء.
Peace be upon you, everybody, dear friends. I would like to extend my full appreciation for this invitation, for inviting me to be part of this very significant event that takes place around Aida-based investment analysis in Egypt. And as a matter of fact, we have been involved with this Aida model with focus on guiding agricultural investments for higher impact Aida-based investment analysis. As a matter of fact, it was a collaborative effort. Let me introduce myself. My name is Mohammed Al-Kirsh, Assistant to the Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation in Egypt. As a matter of fact, massive efforts have been exerted in the Ministry of Agriculture. Dear Yumna, can you please help me with the next slide, please? As a matter of fact, in terms of the Aida and the overall Aida model, this actually involved a collaborative effort, a collaborative endeavor. Aida supported the development of Egypt's new agricultural strategy. This is in line with the, of course, the development goals and Egypt's vision 2030. Priority goals of Egypt. As a matter of fact, several workshops have taken place between the ministry, ARC, IFPRI, IFAD, the FAO, in order to prioritize investment and identify key areas for investment. Massive effort has taken place around these different areas. Priority investment areas in Egypt have been identified. Costing of interventions and estimations have also been identified. Aida again has been very helpful in terms of setting priorities for Egypt, costing of interventions and estimation of benefits. The interactive nature of Aida allowed for a dynamic priority setting and investment analysis during the workshops. We have taken into account the whole range of variables, and this helped us also come up with future forecasting and projections to try to identify what the future looks like in terms of investment and future investment in the agricultural field. As a matter of fact, also, let me emphasize here that this has been a very dynamic process. We have been able to look at investment options. We have been able to run analysis around different investment options. We've been able to, again, identify some investment options and also identify some agricultural investment options. The results have been, of course, very satisfactory, and as a result, we've been able to come up with a strategy that reflects the top priority issues and main interest areas and of focus in Egypt. Next, please.
Next slide, لو سمحتي.
Next, please. Of course, and let me emphasize really, Aida is so easy to use. It's an internet-based, online-based model that is available for users, and we can actually feed this whole model with some information, with some data to generate certain results and to generate certain investment options. We have been able to carry out a number of workshops and training courses targeting experts. Also, we have been able to involve CAPMAS. CAPMAS is the authority responsible for generating data and statistics in Egypt. In order to build Aida and to understand the underlying structure we've been able to carry out different activities and projects around the CGE model. Next, please. As a matter of fact, the Aida tool also has been part and parcel of a larger system and a larger model embraced by the Ministry of Agriculture around digitalization and digital transformation. The digital transformation unit within the Ministry of Agriculture and Land Reclamation was established by a ministerial decree, and this unit also falls under the supervision of the ministry itself. And this unit looks at infrastructure development and introducing reforms. Of course, we work closely with the Ministry of Communication to try to also set up this particular unit, and we've been able to also identify human capacity and human resources human resources have been trained, have been also provided with capacity building interventions. Also, we have been able to also set up committees and task forces to support this digital transformation unit. We provided them with training and capacity building interventions. And as a result, also here, we have been able to certify the resources within this unit. As a matter of fact, we also would like to express our full appreciation to IFAD and IFPRI. And as a matter of fact, also here, we have been able to act in a responsive way to COVID-19. And today we have some online applications to try to respond to COVID-19. So yes, also we have been able to launch a campaign called Grow and Grow Well, or Plant Well. And this campaign is available online. And this campaign has led to significant improvement in the performance of agriculture. Today we have been able to see also farmers being very responsive to this campaign launched by the Ministry of Agriculture. We've been using different social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've been using a combination of online platforms. It's called Izra Sah, or Plant Well. So far, actually, we have around 750,000 followers. In other words, 750,000 people benefiting from the campaigns and benefiting from the key messages communicated through this Izra Sah, or Plant and Grow Well, that is being launched by the Ministry of Agriculture. As a matter of fact, when we talk about the vision of the ministry and the overall orientation, we have three major areas of focus with help from IFPRI. IFPRI has helped us greatly come up with a strategy around digitalization. I am aware that I'm running out of time and I will finish soon. As a matter of fact, and as part of this plan, we have three major areas. The first is the GIS. The second is the artificial intelligence. And Aida will be one of the most important tools. The third will be technology and use of digital technology, and also technology in support of agriculture and farming processes. Again, let me emphasize the importance of this particular digital transformation unit in support of the agricultural sector. And I hope that we will be able to continue this collaborative and fruitful effort with IFPRI, with IFAD, and with all the partners that we have been working with so far. Thank you so much.
For this excellent example. One of the main goals of Aida is to guide a policy. And from your example, we know that this goal has been accomplished. And thank you again for this excellent example. Our next speaker is Mr. Zuhair Al-Qadi, International Macro Fiscal Advisor and former Director of the Tunisian Institution of Competitiveness and Quantitative Studies. Mr. Zuhair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I will thank you for this invitation, and thank Aida and the IFPRI team for the organization and for their support also. So I'm going to talk about our experience with Aida, IFPRI, and our institute, ITSEC, which under supervision of the Ministry of Development, Investment and International Cooperation. With the Aida support, we have succeeded to develop a model for the evaluation of public policy and investment. So the next slide, please. So, for example, and in response to the pandemic, the database social accounting matrix was used to jointly estimate impact of the economy, food system, and households. This model allowed us to evaluate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the Tunisian economy. And the results were used by the Ministry of Economic Finance and Investment to simulate the resilience of the economy during lockdown period, and also to propose measures to counter this impact. Next slide, yes. In terms of capacity building, with the support of Aida, we are able to build the social accounting matrix SAM that is currently used by the institute. So our institute staff is now able to build and update Tunisia SAM. And we have also extensive training session were held on the use of the CGI model underlined by Aida. So in addition to many other tools in our institute, this model is an important tool that allows us to conduct many economic simulation and provide insight of many challenges facing the Tunisian economy and in particular food and agriculture. The next slide. In this last slide, we can see the Aida online tools. I think it's already presented and well explained by James. So indeed, Tunisia is considering the development of new agriculture strategy. And in this context, Aida can play an important role in supporting policy dialogue based on scientific evidence and the definition of investment priorities. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zahir. That was an excellent example of how Aida was used in the COVID context. And, traditional economic models would have taken a very long time to produce results, and the pandemic demands rapid response. So this emphasizes the usefulness and the difference of Aida. Thank you so much, Mr. Zahir. Our next speaker is Mr. Athur Mabiso, Senior Technical Specialist and Economist, Research and Impact Division of IFAD. Athur, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to really congratulate the IFPRI team and the country teams that have been working on Aida. A really impressive tool. I think it brings, together work that has been done over several years. It's not a small undertaking, and I think really congratulate the team. I would just like to make a few remarks regarding the tool and just the value that it brings, and just to highlight a few things, because I think, probably better for people to begin to explore the tool and use it themselves to really get a taste of what it does and what it can really help with. But I think one of the key things which I want to emphasize as a technical person is the fact that it is grounded on, years of, initial work in terms of analytical quantitative work for the IAPA models that really form the basis and the foundation of this work, which took quite a lot of effort from various stakeholders, and really want to highlight here the collaborative fashion that the product has been developed by. Because if you think about it, the data came from the country teams, really working closely with the country teams and developing the social accounting matrices that really are the engine, if you will, of the models behind all this. And then bringing in, empirical rigor and evidence from impact evaluations to understand the relationships between the investment areas and the kinds of impacts that you can generate. And then finally, really the crown of it all, I think, is making it accessible to people that may not be technical or modelers. And I like what James and others are saying. It's modeling without a model. And this, to me, I think really, increases the access. It makes it accessible and makes it more useful because it's now allowing for various stakeholders to use it as a tool for dialogue and deciding what are the investment options they should go for to really address the SDGs and make an impact, particularly for the small scale producers that IFAD really cares about. And in that regard, I think, just the ability to select different types of investment options and enable people to discuss about what are the key priorities given the limited constraints and resources that are always limited. Finally, just to perhaps highlight, the fact that, of course, this is currently looking at, 4 countries, but I think there is also potential to build upon the work of RIAPA in the past, which covered more countries, to hopefully, provide this type of tool for other countries as well. And as I was looking at the question and answers box, I see some people are already asking about whether this kind of tool can be made available for other countries. So with that, I will stop there, but really want to congratulate the team and congratulate the countries that have really pioneered and are trailblazers in this regard. Thank you, and over to you, Duran.
Thank you, Athur, for the technical perspective of this tool. We really appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that people are asking about scaling this up to other countries. Hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to do that. Our next speaker is Mr. Christian Derlagen, Project Manager and Senior Economist, Monitoring and Analyzing Food and Agricultural Policies Program of FAO. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tudan, and a very good afternoon to everyone. And thank you to the organizers of the IFAD Innovation Talks for inviting me. It's a privilege to be part of this event and this panel. I also would like to congratulate IFPRI, IFAD, and the CGIAR PIM program with the launch of the Aida online tool. Congratulations to James on a very interesting presentation. So in FAO's Agri-Food Economics Division, I lead the Monitoring and Analyzing Food and Agricultural Policies program, and also called MAFAP. And under this initiative, for nearly a decade, we have been assisting governments, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, in strengthening their capacity to make policy and investment decisions based on evidence. And we've done that by helping governments to identify the key constraints that hold back development of agricultural value chains, tracking how much and on what governments spend their agricultural budgets, but also by doing cost-benefit analyses of specific policy or investment options and assessing the impacts of, say, changes in trade policy or market and price policies on the prices that farmers receive, on employment, or on poverty. But whenever we worked on policy and investment solutions, the question that policymakers, in our experience, always struggle with is, are these actually the right solutions? Are these the right investments? Are these the right priorities, in other words, to drive the transformation of our agricultural sector? And I believe that the Aida online tool is a big step forward in responding to that need, to that demand. For those of you who are familiar with the opera Aida by Verdi, you may know that in the opera, Aida actually dies a tragic death at the end. However, I'm convinced that this Aida will have a brighter destiny. I think it's a very important innovation, and in a few minutes that I have left, I would like to leave you with 3 reasons or reflections on why I think it is. First, I believe there is a very strong and growing demand for prioritization tools, such as the Aida tool. Many countries are facing mounting development challenges related to climate change, food insecurity, poverty. And we also know that there is no lack of ambition to make agriculture part of the solution to these challenges. In many countries, including many of the countries where our program works, there are comprehensive and often ambitious agricultural strategies and investment plans that are available. But at the same time, fiscal resources are increasingly constrained, and even more so now as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Something that Martien van Nieuwkoop was also referring to earlier in his introductory remarks. So this makes prioritization all the more important. But robust quantitative evidence on which investments to prioritize is scarce, and there could be tremendous scope and interest for expanding this model and tool to other countries, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa. The second point is that although we know that economy-wide modeling has its shortcomings, not everything can be modeled, and the results are only as good as the data that go into the model. It offers something that other tools don't, and it's all in the name. That is an estimation of the effects of investments on broader outcomes. And this is important, I believe, because government priorities and objectives differ from country to country. While some governments, for example, would prioritize agri-food sector growth over job creation, others would prioritize exactly the reverse. And so the nice feature of this tool is that it allows governments to prioritize investments based on their expected impact on these outcomes, and to play around with that. One of the areas in which the tool, I think, could be further expanded, maybe not to just model or include in the tool household welfare as one of the outcomes, but to try to include also more specific outcomes such as poverty, food insecurity, or nutrition. And that would allow policymakers to use this tool to estimate more clearly the extent to which investments would contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the third point, which is my last point, is that, and it was mentioned before, is that the innovative power of this tool is, of course, that it puts policymakers in the driver's, or in this case, in the modeler's seat, and being able to play around with the different scenarios, play around with the expenditure per investment, and seeing how impacts change is a very powerful feature. And although, of course, the model itself remains sort of a black box, I think just as many of us who drive cars don't exactly know all the details about the engine technology that is hidden under the hood, being able to adjust the scenarios between investing in extension or irrigation, roads, and so forth in real time makes this a very valuable tool for users. And I think the experiences from the colleagues from Egypt and Tunisia were a clear confirmation of this, and in how the tool can be instrumental in building capacity. Yeah, so let me wrap up here. I think it's a great new tool that can not only help governments design better agricultural investment strategies, but it can also help to define and set priorities for strategies that are already in place. It can help guide priority setting in the framework of post-COVID Build Back Better agenda, and it can inform the repurposing of agricultural policies and investments to achieve better nutrition, climate change, and biodiversity outcomes. And on this last topic, I just wanted to mention that FAO is working with UN Environment and UNDP to launch a UN interagency report later this year. And the tool is also very much in line with what we in our program in FAO see as one of the key emerging areas for our own policy support. And that is to assist member countries in making more efficient and effective policy and investment decisions to advance agricultural transformation and accelerate progress towards the SDGs. So let me stop here. Once again, congratulations to the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for highlighting the demand, the need of this tool and other tools like it. We're running behind time. I'm going to give the floor immediately to my colleague, Gladys. Not sure if we can do the Q&A. Maybe we'll just go to closing. Gladys, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sudan. We have lots of questions in the Q&A. I would like to take at least a couple of those questions. I think that it has been quite important to be able to focus on the fact that AIDA is not only guiding investments, but also contributing to building capacity and developing country and organizational strategies while prioritizing interventions. So let me go quickly to the first question. Is from Florence Segal. She is thanking the panelists and wants to ask, so we get economical and social dimensions. What about the environmental impact? Can we analyze that? And may I ask all the panelists to please turn on their videos and let us know who would like to address the question? Thank you. James, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to unmute yourself and answer the question for Florence? Thank you.
Sure. No, thanks very much. And I saw actually there's a number of questions from Florence, from David, from others around both environmental impacts and also climate impacts. And I think this is absolutely key. Right now, our AIDA model does not capture, say, impacts on water consumption or water stress, water security. And this is something that we'd like to be able to build into the tool over time. Equally important is what are the returns to investments under climate risks, for example? We know that some investments actually do better, have a higher return when climate conditions are worse, like irrigation, for example. And so we want to be able to reflect that. That's another area that we are working in, and we hope to be able to sort of improve and update AIDA over time with this kind of information. So yes, absolutely. Climate change, environmental footprints, these are like absolutely on the front line of our pipeline for improving the model. So thanks for those questions.
Thank you, James. We have time for more questions, actually. So I'm going to address the question by Karen Smaller. He says, great tool, congratulations. Is this only focused on public sector investment, ODA, or public resources? Or does it also cover private sector investment? And can this tool also be used by potential private sector investors? Who would like to address that question? James, would that be you again? Yes.
Yes, probably. Sorry about that. So it's true. A lot of the partners that we engage with tend to be either governments themselves or our development partners like IFAD or the World Bank or Gates Foundation or USAID, for example. But yes, this can be used for private sector investments. There was another question which asked if this tool could be used for sort of personal investments. And I think, one of the limitations that, and that Christian talked about as well, is that, this tool has a right use and a wrong use. And I think because this is focused on the bigger economy and for things like agricultural transformation, we're not going to see the contributions of a very small investment showing up on changes in national GDP, for example. What the tool is best used for are those national strategic questions. What are the impacts of a large-scale investment or a national policy? And so yes, you could think of a large-scale private investment that could move some of the agri-food system outcomes or poverty and household welfare. But there are limits to how small we can go. Thanks.
Thank you, James. We have now a more strategic question. This is Walid Kayal. He is asking, are any more countries, for example, Lebanon, to be included in the online AIDA tool? Who would like to address that question? James, I believe it's going to be your turn again. We have very shy speakers.
Sorry, I was hoping my colleague Clemens would speak up, but yeah. So we certainly have plans to expand the coverage of AIDA, and one of the things that I would stress, and I hope this came through in the presentation, is that in a sense there are two different versions of AIDA. There is the online version, which we've shown you, which is used through the web and the web-based interface. And then there's also an offline version of AIDA. And so even though we've only highlighted 4 countries where we have the online version up and running, we have, as I mentioned, RIAPA models and AIDA models for many more countries than that. And so our coverage is getting better and better. We are just, our online versions are sort of lagging behind our offline versions. So if you're interested in a particular country, please reach out to me. I've shared my email with a couple of people in the chat. and we'll be able to sort of follow up with you about your particular country of interest. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James. We have a question that actually Christian was addressing before as well. So I would like to also give the floor to other developers. Jose Cáceres, and I think Jose is from IFAD, if I'm not wrong. How long would it take to set up the model in another country? How much would it cost? And are there any publications on the methodology and variables used in the model? Sudan, I don't know if you would like to address this question, or Clemens, perhaps?
I would give the floor to Clemens. He has more details than I do.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thanks for all these very good questions. And as many of the people have highlighted, there is always scope for expansion, both in terms of new countries and also in terms of new features. So as James has said, CGE or RIAPA models and social accounting matrices that underlie the Aida tool are available for many countries. The innovative part really is the online tool. And so it does take some effort to translate an offline tool into an online tool. But I would like to say that a lot of the groundwork has been done. A lot of the trial and error has been completed. So we know how to do these things now. So any kind of additional country and additional feature will be easier to add than what we have gone through over the past few years. I don't want to put a price tag now, but yes, please reach out to us, and then we'll all work together with our partners to hopefully expand the coverage of online Aida globally to many more countries.
Thank you so much, Clemens. Because you have addressed the question about other countries being able to use Aida, I'm going to move on to the next most voted question, which is from Alessandra Garbero from IFAD. When considering multiple investments, how does the model handle interactions among the interventions? Are impacts considered additive, or does the data allow for interactions in the treatment? Would like to address that question. Maybe this is a more technical question, so maybe James?
Yeah, I'm afraid I had flagged Alessandra's question as well as one definitely worth following up on. It's a good question. What we are taking into account in this kind of model, and there were some questions about, you know, the strengths and weaknesses of models in general, and that's very well taken. One of the big advantages of this kind of model that we're using is that there is no such thing as a free lunch, right? You cannot, for example, subsidize imported fertilizers without somehow having the foreign exchange to pay for those imported fertilizers. You cannot expand production of one particular crop without finding the land on which to grow that crop, sometimes from other crops that were being grown. So there are these trade-offs inside and these resource constraints inside the model. So what that means then is that when you bundle two investments together, right, they will face at the very least some market constraints if they are focused on supplying domestic markets. So if you are investing in irrigation and an extension, and you're increasing agricultural supply twice over, then you are going to face more stringent market constraints. So no, the answer is you know, the investments, when they're bundled together, are not simply additive. Because we are increasing the constraints or the importance of those marketing and resource constraints that we are facing. And so this is one of the strengths of this model. And it means that, you know, we have to run the model millions of times to capture not just different levels of investment and add them together, but actually look at how these investments interact. So thanks very much. It's a very good question.
Thank you, James. Moving on to the next question. David Egmont is asking, if you invest, you want your investment to be future-proof. Are climate and environmental impacts somehow integrated here? I think this is related to the first question that we had before, so maybe just a couple of words to round that up, James, so that we can move on to the next question, please.
Absolutely. So climate risk is just one source of uncertainty. We also have world market risk. And so if you're investing in an export-oriented crop, for example, or an export-oriented agriculture, you also have to take into account what may be happening in foreign markets or international markets. And so again, this is something that we're building towards. It's a big focus for us, obviously coming out of COVID, and because climate change is more important this year more than ever, we're very much focused on building resilience issues and climate risk and world market risk into our analysis. So this is one of those features Clemens mentioned that we hope to see appearing on a regular basis inside AIDA. So again, thanks for the question.
Thank you so much, James. Then Manuk Overcamp is asking, he's saying first, very interesting, many thanks for the excellent presentations. Since AIDA is based on historical data, but also assisted to estimate the impact of COVID-19 in Tunisia, is AIDA including the negative effects that climate shocks and extreme weather events, such as desert locusts, bring to the agricultural sector? Who would like to answer that question? James again.
Sorry, perfect timing. I have a dog barking in the background. Yes, no, so one of the advantages of this model, and there was another question about whether it's a problem that we're holding all these other factors constant, like climate change and locusts and COVID-19. And actually, you know, rather than a limitation, that's actually a strength of this type of approach, because it provides us with a kind of a simulation laboratory in which we can experiment with these different options and allow everything else to sort of disappear, and we can focus in on the choices that we are making about our investments. And what makes that particularly important for investment decision making is that there are going to be certain factors that are beyond the control of the person designing the investment. If it's someone working at IFAD designing a new project, should they be held accountable if weather conditions in the final year of their project are terrible, or if suddenly locust becomes a reality? So we want to be able to say, you know, yes, it's true, COVID-19 has reduced market opportunities for many parts of the agricultural sector, but things could have been even worse in the absence of your particular investment. And so that allows us to address that. Having said that, we do factor in, we can factor in what's the impact of our investment with COVID-19 and compare it to the investment without COVID-19. And that's exactly how we've gone about doing our COVID analysis. So again, thanks very much.
Thank you, James. We have time for another couple of questions. Marcy Asindu is asking, could there be an opportunity of incorporating more dynamic models like system dynamics, SD, and agent-based models into the AIDA tool, like it has been done for SAM and CGE?
That's another very technical question. So just to let you know, for those of you who are not living and breathing models every day like I am, you know, you get these very constrained models like AIDA and RIAPA that force us to be consistent. Again, like I said, you can't import fertilizer unless you have foreign exchange to pay for them. You have to deal with land constraints. So what that means then is, because we force this consistency and this adding up constraints into our model, there are limits to how many other factors that we only have loose understandings of how they relate to the economy or to the investments. We are a little bit more constrained in being able to bring those factors into play. So for example, we can link our model to dietary change as an outcome indicator, but we cannot link it to stunting and wasting because we do not have a strong economic theory on how economic performance affects child stunting. But in these other types of models, it's possible to just put in an elasticity, put in some kind of relationship and say, this affects that. We don't really know how, but we see it moving. So we're a little bit more constrained than these other types of models, but the advantage is that it brings that structural rigor, that consistent framework that we think is absolutely crucial when it comes to investment decision making. Because we think if you want to make an investment, you need to think about those trade-offs, and you need to be strict about how you're going to pay for something or who's going to pay for something if you're going to propose it. Thanks very much.
Thank you, James. Moving on to the next question. We have actually very, very good questions that are coming up. I would like to address Nadem's question. He's asking, who will be in charge of maintaining the website? I'm guessing he's talking about the tool, and updating the tool, expanding to other countries, and this needs funding and human resources. How are you addressing those sustainability issues? Perhaps Clemens, do you want to take that question?
Well, sure. I mean, on the funding part, I would like to also invite other people to speak up. But there are multiple dimensions to the maintenance part. So first of all, there's the database, which is the social accounting matrix. And these social accounting matrices are increasingly built by our national partners. In the case of Egypt, it's the CAPMAS, the Central Statistical Agency over here in Cairo. In Tunisia, we have heard Zuhair speaking and his team. So those databases and the SAMs, they are maintained by our partners in many countries around the world. Now, the nice thing about the online Aida, as you have seen, it's very easy to use, but of course there is a lot of technology behind. It's up in the cloud. We worked with web developers, etc. So in my view, and we still have to figure this out going forward, but maintaining the technology in the cloud, I think, would be better done in a centralized way. And the continued involvement of international sites. Of course, IFPRI is not a funding agency to IFAD and this effort. And with this event and with all the demand that we have heard from many people, so we hope to attract fresh funding to enable us to continue to work with our partners in new countries to also develop Aida for more countries.
Thank you so much, Clement. I'm not sure if Dina would like to complement somehow the question about sustainability and funding.
Thank you, Gladys. Yes. Well, the thing is, obviously, demand is the starting point. So once we have the demand, this was a pilot in 4 countries, as we initially mentioned, and there is appetite. We see, as we're hearing from Lebanon and all. So, resources, of course, scarce, but this is, I think, a really important tool for decision makers, and therefore, together with governments, together with the partners, IFPRI and others, I'm sure we can find a financing model that is workable for everyone. But obviously, this was under a grant, and therefore we need to find other resources to be able to maintain this. Over.
Thank you so much, Dina. One more question from Christian Back. We're a for-profit rural extension service provider. How can we fit your data model with the data we capture on the ground on a weekly basis? We would like to learn more about the data structure, data formats, etc. Would like to reply to that question?
I think maybe it should be me. I hate to have the first and final word, but I think we would definitely need to hear a bit more about the data stream that you are generating and think through how best to tailor it for this tool. It may be that this is not the right tool for analyzing your particular interventions, or that we will have to think through how we can best reflect what it is that you do inside this tool that we have, but would be happy to do that, to have that discussion with you. So again, please reach out to us and we can discuss your specific case and help you think through how it can be fed into the tools that we have. Thanks.
Thank you, James. I'm being told by one of our timekeepers that actually we have time for Alessandra's question. So Alessandra is once again saying that this is a great tool, and she congratulates the team for the work done. She's saying, if projects fund multiple investments, say extension and irrigation, as in the example, can the model consider interactions or synergistic impacts when multiple interventions are considered?
I think this was actually in part, there were a couple of questions from Alessandra, but this was actually part of what I was trying to explain earlier, which is that, we do try and capture those interaction effects because they are so important, particularly with large scale programs that are more likely to hit those resource and funding constraints and market demand constraints. So the short answer is yes, and it's important that we do that.
Thank you, James. Moving on, as we're running out of time, I would like to now welcome our guests for the closing remarks. Mr. Clemens Brasinger, he is a MENA program leader and senior research fellow at IFPRI. Clemens, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Gladys. So with Aida, I think we have made a big step forward to provide people with easier access to what is otherwise really complicated economic tools like computable general equilibrium models. As we have heard today, Aida has already supported agricultural strategy development and decision-making in several countries and has become an important tool in the toolbox of several ministries and other local organizations. Aida is therefore an excellent example of how digitalization and increasing computing power can not only drive innovation in food production and marketing, but can also make an important contribution to more evidence-based food policy making and investment planning. As is the case for many innovations, and Aida is spearheading the broader idea of modeling without a model, like James has said, there is certainly scope for expanding Aida's functionality, as many of our questions and also panelists have mentioned, going forward, and also for supporting more countries around the world to develop their own Aida tools. We at IFPRI are ready and look forward to providing such support together with our partners. Now, the development of Aida required a lot of creativity, advanced skills, and perseverance, as you all can imagine. It was an extraordinary team effort, and I would like to spend a minute and take this opportunity to thank the whole team of James, Dalia, Brian, Hossam, Yumna, Sikandra, Mai, Askar, Josie, Mariam, Todash, Manfred, Fadi, Mansour, Mohammed, Wajdi, Shokri, and the web developers from Development Seed and Vitamin. I would also like to thank Dina, Tarek, Thodan, Gabriele, Abdul Karim, and all other IFAD colleagues for their strong belief in Aida and support throughout the project. And thanks to all our partners in Egypt, Jordan, Tunisia, and Yemen, without whom the development of Aida would not have been possible. Last but not least, thanks to Gladys, the organizing team, all the speakers and participants who made today's event such a big success. Thank you, everyone. Bye and take care.
Thank you so much, Clemens. And now I'm honored to welcome Donal Brown, Associate Vice President for the Program Management Department at IFAD. Donal, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. So on behalf of IFAD, I would really like to thank you all today for your participation in this important conversation. And obviously a special thanks to the various speakers, to IFPRI and the team that organized this event. I think it surpassed our expectations on the amount of interest, which meant it put a lot more pressure on the organizing team to make sure it worked. So thank you to all of you, and I hope you found it interesting. I mean, IFAD tries to be at the front of, or the forefront of promoting innovations for agricultural transformation for the rural poor. But I think we can and need to do much more as IFAD, but also the whole of the development community interested in this space in the light of the current progress on SDGs, but also with the challenges, as we've alluded to today, with COVID, but also on climate change. I think it's pretty clear that rural development, food security and agricultural transformation, at least for the poor, is going backwards at the moment. And so I hope tools like Aida will be useful in this context, because we certainly believe that innovation, and I hope this came through today, is not only linked to technology and top-notch research, but actually it comes from clearly identified opportunities or challenges from the ground with local ideas and solutions as the starting point. And as I think we've seen today, you know, the real innovation has to at least have the potential to be quite transformative or disruptive. We can't, at this point in time, just look at little steps forward. We really do have to look at big steps forward. And in this case, you know, the originating from issues identified from a regional division in IFAD, and then obviously with a strong partnership with IFPRI, which is, you know, the IFPRI-IFAD partnership has been there for 10 years plus, for many years really, and working together to help provide practical solutions around data analysis, policy informed decision making and dialogue. And in the NEN region, this has meant going beyond traditional research and responding to these bigger issues. So the story of Aida stemmed from the fact that with increasing public financing and the costs of public financing, there is very limited fiscal space, and every dollar invested has to really be able to demonstrate the benefits. And as I think we saw today, but also, you know, the trade-offs, investing in one area versus investing in another area. What are the different, you know, benefits, but what are the different trade-offs that need to be made? And there's always going to be competing demand, competing needs, and prioritization is going to be key. And we shouldn't be defensive about that. And we shouldn't be defensive about that within the kind of agriculture sector and IFAD's mandate. Many governments, especially middle-income countries, are preferring to borrow now for increasingly expensive sources of funding for hardware, such as infrastructure, and drop some of the soft activities, such as training, capacity building, extension services, as they're more difficult to quantify, but also don't provide the short-term benefits. So while governments finance some of these soft activities themselves, only a very few set of governments in low and middle income countries, you know, have been able to really start to address the agriculture data gap and to make that data truly transformative by linking it to policies and decision making. And we definitely need to invest more in this and on the digital technologies to make this simpler. So I hope the discussion today has shown how tools like Aida can help to respond to the country demand for more efficient and effective decision making by combining the global outreach of such digital technologies with the potential for making them much more data-driven policy making. So I hope Aida is not going to be just a useful tool for IFAD and its partners, but that there is interest for other agencies and stakeholders, and as a result, we will be able to all provide better support to governments in these decision making. Just a few little takeaways I took away from listening to the conversation today. Firstly, it seems to me Aida allows us to weigh up some quite complex and difficult trade-offs and prioritize investments, which I think, you know, is welcome. I think it puts policymakers and decision makers very much in the driver's seat, which is where they should be. I also think that there is a bit of a story here about innovation doesn't just happen overnight, and it does take time and perseverance, and we shouldn't be afraid of testing, failing, and rebuilding, but also we need to be able to persuade. There were some interesting questions I think came up in the conversation about sustainability and continual improvement of tools like this, and we need to take them away as a community, but also as IFAD, and think about how we can respond to them. And we really need to be ready to to look at agricultural investments against other potential investments and not be defensive on this, but be able to, you know, provide the evidence and the benefits. And maybe just one last point. I noted that Christian said that in the opera of Aida, Aida dies tragically, but I understand in Arabic, Aida also has a different meaning, and it means something along the lines of reward or return. So maybe the end of the story's not so bad as Christian was making out, and maybe there are some real rewards at the end of this story. So with that, I'd like to close, and I'd like to thank you all for your participation. Hope that you all have a good rest of the day in whatever time zone you're in. So thank you very much, and thanks to the team for organizing this again.
Thank you very much, Donal, not only for your guiding words, but also for making emphasis on the fact that innovation is not only technology. Innovation does take time, and innovation takes also a lot of courage and willingness to fail and learn from our failures. So with that, I would like to conclude the event by inviting you to our next IFAD Innovation Talks that will be hosted by the ECG department at IFAD, and we will be talking about behavioral approaches in measurement and delivering impact. What are we learning? So with that, I conclude the event. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we will be sharing the slides and the link to the recording via email. Thank you. Goodbye.